deep dive. Today, we have a genuinely fascinating text for you, learner.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those documents that just sort of breaks your brain in the best way possible.
Exactly. We're analyzing a dense but, profoundly impactful philosophical document titled Two Steps to Not Two.
Right, and the scope of it is just massive.
It is. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically unpack the exact mechanism of how you, the listener, can move from feeling completely isolated in the universe to, well, experiencing infinite non-dual oneness.
Which is quite the journey, honestly.
Yeah, because right now, as you are listening to this, you're operating under a massive, unquestioned assumption about how reality works. It's like the default operating system of the human experience.
It really is. You feel like you are a specific, localized subject.
Right, like you're a person sitting in a chair or making breakfast or driving your car.
And you are experiencing an object, which right now happens to be the sound of our voices.
Yeah, connecting you, the subject, to us, the object, is this continuous process of experiencing.
And it's a completely natural way to view the world. It is the unquestioned duality of everyday life.
Totally.
You can think of it as a sort of triangular format, right? The experiencer, the experienced, and the experience itself. That triangle basically forms the boundary of everything we think we know.
Exactly. It feels as factual as gravity. Like you are in there and the world is out there.
Right.
But then, you stumble across a text like the one we were examining today. And this document looks at that deeply ingrained triangular format of your life and says, actually, no, you are the non-dual reality.
You and the entire universe are one and the same.
Yeah. And let's be honest, when you hear that from your default setting of total separation, it sounds completely absurd.
Oh, completely.
It sounds like a riddle or, I don't know, just poetic wishful thinking.
Well, because from the standpoint of everyday duality, it is absurd. You can't just, jump from feeling like a tiny isolated fragment in a vast universe to suddenly experiencing infinite oneness.
Right, there's no shortcut.
Exactly. A philosopher or a teacher cannot simply stand on a mountaintop, shout non-duality, and expect you to suddenly drop a lifetime of cognitive conditioning.
Yeah, there is an enormous experiential gap between where you are right now and what the text is actually pointing to.
A massive gap.
Okay, let's unpack this, because bridging that gap is exactly what the source material attempts to do.
And it does it brilliantly.
We are going to explore how a master teacher doesn't just shout from the peak, but actually climbs all the way down to where you are, meets you in your world of separation, and systematically dismantles it.
Systematically is the key word there. It is a method consisting of two very deliberate movements.
Right. And the irony of the first movement is that to eventually prove to you that everything is one, the teacher has to start by creating a massive surgical division.
What's fascinating here is that the text temporarily accepts and even strictly enforces your mistaken worldview just to give you a foothold.
Like giving you a ladder.
Exactly. This first step is a methodological tool called adhyāropa, which translates roughly to false attribution or superimposition.
Okay, false attribution.
Yeah. The text essentially says, all right, you firmly believe you are a separate individual in a world of objects. Fine, let's analyze your exact experience using your own rules of separation.
So they play along.
Right, and they introduce a razor-sharp binary split to prepare your mind for the deeper truth.
Right, they divide your entire reality into two distinct buckets. On one side, you have the pure seer.
The ultimate subject.
The pure consciousness principle. That, the text argues, is the true you.
Yes, the duk.
And on the other side, you have the seen, the entire objective universe.
The dṛśya.
And into this seen bucket goes absolutely everything you can observe, right? The physical world, matter, your own body. All of this is categorized as the not self.
And the text is ruthless about maintaining this division. It uses clear, logical distinctions to prove the boundary. It argues that the not self is entirely objectifiable. You can look at it, you can measure it, weigh it. The true self, however, is the ultimate subject looking at it.
Okay, so the not self is fundamentally inert matter, while the true self is like pure illuminating consciousness.
Exactly.
Now look, it's easy to separate myself from my physical environment. I understand that, a chair across the room is the scene.
Yeah.
It's an object.
Sure.
But the text is putting my actual thoughts, my emotions, and my intellect into the matter bucket.
It is.
That's a really tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
How does this philosophy justify treating the human mind as an inert object? Because my instinct, much like Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am, is to completely identify with my mind as the subject.
It is the most common sticking point, without a doubt, and it feels entirely counterintuitive at first.
Right.
But this is where the brilliance of the adhyāropa method shines. The philosophy asks you to look closely at the actual mechanics of observation. Can you observe your thoughts?
Yes.
Can you notice when a thought arises, lingers, and passes away?
Well, yeah. I mean, I can notice when I'm suddenly hit with a wave of anxiety or when my mind is racing to solve a problem. I can watch the, internal weather change.
Exactly. And the logic dictates that the observer must be distinct from the observed.
Whoa.
If you can watch your thoughts change, you cannot be the changing thoughts. You are the permanent backdrop against which that change is measured.
Wow, okay.
Because they are objectifiable to you, they belong in the bucket of the scene. Furthermore, the text points out that thoughts have attributes.
Like what?
They are fast, slow, happy, sad. But the true observer is completely attributeless. It is just the blank awareness in which those attributes appear.
Wow.
Therefore, your mind is not the self. The mind is actually inert.
Okay, wait. I think I see the mechanism here. Think of a thought like a dark piece of stained glass.
Okay, I like that.
On its own, the glass doesn't emit any light. Right?
Yeah.
It's just inert material.
Yeah.
You can't see the beautiful colors or patterns until a completely separate light source shines through it. The glass doesn't generate the light. It just filters it. So in this framework, my mind and thoughts are the stained glass, and the pure consciousness, the seer, is the light shining through, bringing them into my awareness.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, yes. The mind appears conscious only because it is borrowing the light of the true self.
So if I follow this logic to its conclusion, the text is ruthlessly putting everything I identify with, my personality, my intellect, my memories, my anxieties, into the not-self bucket.
Everything.
The core message of this entire first phase of the teaching is, you are none of these. You are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the world.
Right.
You are just the pure, untouched witness of all these changing phenomena.
Precisely. You have discriminated between the seer and the seen. Now, it is crucial to remember that the text knows this is not the final truth.
Okay.
This intense separation is a provisional acceptance of duality. It is a scaffolding.
Scaffolding.
When you construct a massive building, you need a temporary scaffold to give you a handhold, to let you climb up and do the work. Once the building is finished and stable, the scaffolding is removed.
That makes a lot of sense.
This severe division is just cognitive scaffolding to wean you away from your mistaken identifications with your mind and body.
But that leaves us with a pretty glaring logical problem.
How so?
If we stop here, having built the scaffold, we haven't reached not two. We have two completely separate, distinct things.
Oh.
We have the pure, untouched seer over here, and this massive, inert, objective universe, including my own mind over there. We still have a binary. I've just shifted where the boundary line is drawn.
This raises an important question. How do you get rid of the universe you just spent all this time separating yourself from?
Right.
You have to transition to the second movement of the teaching, which is called apavāda, or retraction.
Retract.
The text now retracts the earlier division. It turns its attention to that massive bucket called the seen, the physical world, the matter, the thoughts. And it asks a devastating foundational question.
Which is?
Does any of this actually have an independent existence?
And the philosophical answer is a resounding no.
Exactly.
But, to prove it, we can't just take their word for it.
Yeah.
Let's look at how things actually exist.
Yeah.
If you hand me a clay pot, you're not actually handing me a substance called pot.
Right. Pot isn't a substance.
Pot is just a word.
Yeah.
It's a temporary shape, a specific arrangement. The only actual reality there, the only substance, is the clay.
Yes.
If you hand me a glass of water from the ocean, you can't isolate a wave. A wave has no independent substance other than water. It's just water in motion.
Exactly. The form is entirely dependent on the substance. And the radical claim of this philosophy is that in the exact same way, the entire universe of names and forms, everything we put into the seen bucket, has no substance, no existence whatsoever apart from consciousness.
Oh, man. It makes me think of how we process a dream.
How so?
When you are in the middle of a vivid dream, the duality feels 100% real. You experience a vast, tangible world.
Oh, absolutely.
You might be running through a city, feeling the wind on your face, terrified of whatever is chasing you. In that moment, you are the subject, and the city and the wind are the objects. They feel totally independent of you.
They exhibit all the properties of solid reality: space, time, tangibility.
Right, but then you wake up in your bed, and you realize that the entire world, the city, the wind, the physical distance you were running, didn't exist apart from you.
It was all you.
It wasn't made of bricks or air. It was your own consciousness alone, projecting itself into a multitude of forms. You generated the space, the time, and the objects out of your own awareness.
And the staggering assertion of this text is that the waking world operates on the exact same underlying mechanism.
Wait, really? The exact same?
Yes. The objective universe isn't a separate second thing floating outside of you in some void. The waking world is a mythia appearance. Mythia is a highly specific term. It means an appearance that is dependently real. It seems solid and independent, but upon inquiry, it has no reality of its own. It is an appearance resting in the one non-dual reality.
So to tear down the scaffold, the text takes that entire bucket of the scene and dissolves it right back into the seer.
Exactly.
If you intellectually negate all the temporary attributes, the name wave, the name pot, the name individual, the name universe, what is left is just the underlying substance.
Right.
But wait, I note the source material doesn't conclude by saying there is one consciousness. It specifically uses the term secondless.
Yes.
Is that because one implies a mathematical quantity, like one apple, which inherently means there could be a second or a third?
That is a brilliant catch, and it is exactly right. Number itself is an attribute. It is a limitation. If I say reality is one, it objectifies reality as an item that can be counted. By insisting that consciousness is secondless, the text cuts off the very possibility of anything else existing outside of it.
It destroys the category of counting altogether.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You cannot count the dreamer and the dream as two separate things.
Wow. That completely shifts the paradigm.
Yeah.
Okay, so during the scaffolding phase, the message was, you are none of these.
Right.
You are the isolated witness, completely separate from the chaotic world. But now, after the retraction, the message dramatically shifts to, you are all of these.
Yes.
Not in the sense that your body is the universe, but that your underlying consciousness is the substratum upon which all forms appear.
Mm-hmm.
The world is the mythia appearance in you.
Exactly. The scaffolding of separation has been completely dismantled. You have arrived at the non-dual reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because as a listener, I am feeling a significant amount of philosophical whiplash right now.
I can imagine.
The text first pounded into my head, I am none of these. Then it turned around and declared, I am all of these. How can both be true simultaneously? Isn't that a direct contradiction that undermines the whole argument?
It is only a contradiction if you treat both statements as operating on the same level of reality. And this is where the genius of the philosophy resolves the paradox, relying entirely on understanding the difference between absolute reality and dependent appearance. We need two terms here, satya and mithya.
We know mythia. What's satya?
Satya is the real. It is the absolute substance that never changes. Mythia, as we discussed, is the apparently real, the changing names and forms that depend entirely on satya to exist.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth. Let's use the dynamic of a movie playing in a theater.
Okay.
The physical screen itself is satya. It is always there, it is unchanging, and it is the necessary foundation.
Right.
The movie being projected, the characters, the dramatic car chases, the massive explosions, that is mythia. The movie appears on the screen, you experience it vividly, but those characters have no independent existence without the screen.
That perfectly illustrates the resolution. When the text says, I am none of these, it means you, as the pure awareness, are not the changing characters. You are not the name and form objects.
Right.
An explosion projected on the movie screen does not actually burn the fabric of the screen. A scene of an ocean does not make the screen wet. The screen remains completely untouched by the drama playing out on it.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And when the text says, I am all of these, it means I am the satya substratum.
Yes.
Without the screen, there is nowhere for the movie to happen. The movie is nothing but the screen reflecting light. So the true binary format of reality isn't me versus the universe. It is I, the absolute reality, plus the universe, the dependent appearance.
Yes. And here is the beautiful mathematical trick of non-duality.
Trick.
Because mythi, the dependent appearance, has no independent substance, it cannot be counted as a second entity.
Oh.
A physical screen plus a projected movie does not equal two screens. It is just one screen playing. Therefore, the universe does not add weight to consciousness. Experiencing the universe does not make consciousness dual.
I think we need to make a really crucial clarification here to reassure the listener.
Yeah.
Because when people hear terms like the universe is a dependent appearance or it has no independent reality, a sort of existential panic sets in.
Of course.
The immediate fear is nihilism.
Yeah.
People think, wait, is my family not real? Is my career a lie?
Right.
Is the world just going to vanish into a void now that I know this?
It is a very common fear, but it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanism we're talking about.
Yeah.
The text does not negate your daily experience of duality. You will still see a world of many objects. You will still interact with your family. You will still eat your dinner. You will still feel the heat of the sun.
So it doesn't all just go blank?
Not at all. What is destroyed is the conclusion that this duality is fundamentally real and exists independently of the underlying consciousness.
Right. Think of looking up at a clear, bright blue sky. You experience a vast blue dome over your head. But intellectually, factually, you know the sky has no color. It is just an optical effect, right? The scattering of sunlight in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Your deep factual knowledge that the sky is colorless does not suddenly make the blue vanish from your eyes.
No.
You still experience the vivid blue color, but you are no longer fooled into believing there is a giant blue ceiling painted above the earth.
That is the exact mechanism of liberation according to this text. The experiential duality continues uninterrupted. You still navigate a pluralistic, complex world.
Right.
But the factual duality is destroyed. The deeply held belief that there are two ultimately real, separate substances, your isolated mind and a universe of dead matter out there, that belief is gone.
Wow.
You experience the many while remaining anchored in the knowledge that they are just temporary appearances in the secondless whole.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does this incredibly abstract, high-level philosophy actually function when you're stuck in traffic or dealing with a stressful conflict at work?
It's all about application.
To answer that, the source material gives us what I consider a masterclass in metaphor. It's a metaphor that brings the entire mechanism of this deep dive into one brilliant image: the whirlpool and the river.
It is the perfect ontological model.
Yeah.
The river represents the immense continuous flow of life, time, and experiences, and the whirlpool represents the individual person. Let's look at this dynamic through the lens of everything we've unpacked, starting with the ignorant view.
The default operating system we discussed at the very beginning.
Right.
If you just look at the surface of a turbulent river, a whirlpool looks like its own distinct entity. It seems to have a separate existence from the rest of the water.
It does.
It has a specific shape, a defined location. We treat it as a noun. We literally point to it and say, watch out for that whirlpool.
And it seems to have its own agency, right? It sucks leaves down. It disrupts the flow around it.
Yeah. I was reading the source, and there's this wild detail. They actually compare it to a battle in the Mahabharata where Duryodhana is described as this dangerous, trapping whirlpool in the river of war.
That's a great reference. It looks like an independent actor fighting against the current.
Right.
And because the whirlpool operates under the illusion that it is separate, it suffers. Imagine the psychological state of a localized shape that thinks it is an entity.
It would be terrifying.
If the whirlpool had a mind, its entire existence would be consumed by fear. It would be terrified of losing its shape, terrified of the chaotic current surrounding it, and absolutely dreading the moment it inevitably dissolves.
Which is the vision of duality.
Yeah.
Seeing yourself as a real, fragile, independent entity constantly fighting to maintain your boundaries against the crushing river of life.
But then we apply the inquiry. We apply the apavāda retraction we learned in step 2.
Okay, we apply retraction.
We ask the most vital question. What is the whirlpool actually made of? Is there some separate delivery of raw material called whirlpool stuff that gets dropped into the river, spins around for a while, and then gets extracted?
Obviously not. The whirlpool is composed entirely of the river water itself. The water is simply flowing through that specific pattern for a brief moment in time.
Exactly. The shape is just a temporary behavior of the water, not an entity.
Right.
Yes, we can use the word whirlpool for everyday transactions like to warn a swimmer, to steer clear of it. But we must understand its dependent nature. It is a mere name for a temporary modification of the substance.
Which brings us to the knowledge view. Can you separate the whirlpool from the river? Can you pick it up in a bucket and carry it away?
You can't.
It's impossible. The moment the current shifts, the spinning stops, the whirlpool dissolves. And what remains? Nothing is lost.
Right.
It is just the flowing river. Because the whirlpool never actually existed as a noun to begin with. It was always just water in motion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire math of this philosophical journey becomes crystal clear.
Let's hear it.
The whirlpool is you, the localized individual, with your heavy sense of ego and your feeling of being a separate doer.
Okay.
The river is the total field of experience, the massive flow of the universe with all its shifting environments and dramas. But the water is the non-dual substratum. It is pure consciousness.
So the math is beautifully simple. Whirlpool equals water. River equals water. There's only one substance.
Exactly. The ignorant whirlpool believes it is born, it struggles violently to maintain its spinning shape, it fears dissolution, and it mourns when other whirlpools fade away.
Right.
But the enlightened whirlpool one, who has internalized the two steps, understands the profound truth. I am the water.
I am the water. That realization completely rewrites the experience of living. The individual doesn't magically levitate out of the river.
No, of course not.
The spinning shape,
Yeah.
your daily life and body remains for a time. But the core identification has fundamentally shifted.
Yes.
The enlightened whirlpool still spins, still experiences the current, but it is completely unafraid of dissolving because it knows that its true substance, the water itself, was never born and can never be destroyed.
It is no longer trapped by the anxiety of maintaining the form. Liberation in this context is not an escape to another dimension.
Right.
It is simply the cognitive shift in identification from the impermanent, dependent shape to the permanent, unchanging substance.
As we wrap up this journey into the text, I am really struck by the deep psychological compassion of this two-step method.
It is remarkably compassionate.
The philosophy doesn't demand you instantly grasp the infinite while you are drowning in the finite. The teacher climbs down into the turbulent river of your daily life.
They meet you where you are.
Yeah, they give you the sturdy scaffolding of separation, pulling the pure observer away from the chaotic mind and world, just so you can catch your breath and find solid ground.
Right.
But then, with ultimate grace, they dismantle the scaffold and show you that the observer, the mind, and the entire universe were never separate to begin with. Your non-dual nature isn't some mystical state you have to acquire. It is the ever-present reality you are already made of.
You're simply recognizing what has always been true, despite the continuing vivid appearance of the world around you.
So, learner, as you go about the rest of your day, I'm going to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
It's a good one.
The next time you find yourself completely overwhelmed by the current of your life, when the emails are piling up, when conflicts arise, when you feel like a struggling, exhausted whirlpool desperately trying to hold its fragile shape together against the crashing waves, stop and ask yourself,
This pause.
are you the spinning, temporary shape? Or are you the immortal, non-dual water that can never ever be washed away?